Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Music Den. I'm, of course, your host, Armando Venditti. Hoping you guys are having a good Friday and then again that you're looking after yourselves and one another. Today, ladies and gentlemen, as I welcome Mr. Jim Bricker back to the channel,
Hello.
we are going to be discussing our top 10 King Crimson albums. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, King Crimson. So sit back, enjoy, have a drink, have a coffee, light one up, burn one if you have to. This is going to be a fun episode. Now, um, King Crimson, successful, influential progressive rock band from the UK, from Great Britain, actually. Um, I have, in all the research I've done, and I'll get your opinion on this, Jim. In the research I've done about King Crimson, I've never heard of a band that has changed members more frequently than King Crimson. I mean, it's almost to the point where if somebody went to the bathroom and didn't come back in time, they got to remember to fill in. I mean, just
Certainly in those early days. Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
exactly. So just before we get into our list, because it's going to be quite an episode, guys. Um, what is your history with King Crimson in terms of being a fan? What drew you to them?
So I was introduced to Crimson by a buddy of mine, probably around 1983 or so. And he said, "You've got to hear, I've heard about King Crimson before that point. I'd probably even heard like Schizoid Man on the radio or something." And I said, "What do you know about these guys? What do you recommend?" He's like, "Beat. You need to hear the album Beat." And I'm like, "Okay." So I got the album Beat. I think I got it the same day that I bought Pink Floyd's The Final Cut. So that's the time frame
Okay,
in which
yeah.
I purchased it.
Hmm.
And I started to listen to it and I didn't get it. It was just like so unlike anything else that I had heard before in terms of all of the interlocking guitars, the shifting time signatures, the just the yeah, I mean, I we'll get into the details of it, but it was very, very hard to follow, for a very plain song like Heartbeat, then you'd get Sartorial Tangier or you'd get Waiting Man, something that's just very difficult to wrap your head around if all you were used to was, you know, uh, pop rock AM FM radio at that time. And, the proggiest you got was say Abacab. At least that was my experience up to that point.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and that's a whole
so
issue altogether and the cabs. We won't even go.
well, yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it was a difficult entry point. But then a few years later in college, we were talking about music, and Crimson came up, and I explained my head scratching experience with Beat. And then it said, "Well, you gotta try Discipline. That'll straighten you right out." And I did, and boy, howdy, was he right. I mean, maybe my listening had matured up to that point. Maybe it was just, in retrospect, I wish I had started with Discipline because I think it'd be an easier gateway into King Crimson. But we'll talk about that along the way. But then in the later 80s, I started my deep dive into the back catalog, and that's where I really got the passion for the band and discovered Starless and Bible Black and Lark's Tongues and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. To say that King Crimson's discography is textured and layered is an understatement. 13 albums in all. And I mean, and you mentioned Discipline and Beat. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you out there who don't know, we're referring to the trilogy of albums that came out in 81, 83, 81, 82, and 84. In other words, the red, blue, and yellow albums, okay, in terms of the color scheme, featuring the configuration of 2011 Adrian Belew, sorry, uh, Bill Bruford, and Robert Fripp. Okay. And just to give you a bit of my background, discipline, not knowing it was discipline at the time, was where I kind of came in to knowing about King Crimson in terms of
Hmm.
they were featured on a music journalism show in Canada called The New Music, which went on to be, you know, syndicated in various markets around the world, and I do believe in the States. I'm not sure, but they were featured on there and in interviews for discipline. And that's how I first heard them. It really didn't pay much attention after that, but that was my first exposure to them. And then when I dove into King Crimson a couple of years back, man, talk about jumping into the deep end. Holy shit. It was just like, what am I listening to? It was avant-garde jazz, it was rock, it was psychedelic, it was classical influenced, it was symphonic, it was a combination of all those styles put into one bowl. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Right.
And every time you put your hand into the cookie jar, let's say, you didn't know what you were going to pull out in terms of
Yeah.
musical styles and albums. Um, so, ladies and gentlemen, we have taken our top 10 albums of King Crimson. And as I said, sit back, relax, light one, have a coffee, have a drink, and hopefully, if you one of the few who have not heard of King Crimson up to this point, hopefully you will discover some new music that you might want to go check out because there is something I do believe in this catalog for everyone out there that can at least uh, find as a gateway into knowing this band on some level. Okay, so
Yep.
enjoy. So, as is
Can I
custom,
throw one other comment out there
sure, of
first?
course, of course.
Um, it should be noted that somewhat thankfully we are limiting ourselves to their studio albums, the 13 core studio albums. If we and this might be fodder for another episode down the road. If we consider the live albums, which came out in standard releases, or the things that have come out through the collectors club that they had, or just the shows that you can buy online directly from King Crimson, there's easily, if you count, there's, you know, 200 shows easily on the King Crimson website. There's, 50 shows in the Collectors Club. There's easily 13 live albums that you could order through Amazon or pick your favorite retailer.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's where I think the real treasure trove lies, is in their live performances. And that's the thing that tipped me from just enjoying the band to becoming an absolute fanatic. Um,
really. Yeah.
the frame by frame box set, which was the first big King Crimson box that came out in 91 or 92, there was one live disc on there, and the three tracks that they had from the 73 74 band just blew my head off of my body, because it was a ferocity and a playing of King Crimson that I had just never heard before. They trod this fine line between jazz fusion, metal. Um, you know,
Yeah.
it was just wild, wild stuff.
Okay, well, before we jump into the top 10, what was your favorite lineup of King Crimson?
I think my favorite lineup is probably the 80s lineup, which was Fripp, Ballou, Levin, and Bruford. It's depending on the day, it might be Fripp, Cross, Wetton, and Bruford from 73, 74. But right
Mm.
now, the 80s lineup um, is kind of my go-to. How about for you?
Uh, Not that I'm copying off your back, but I would say the ladies lineup with Bruford and Ballou and Levin and Fripp. solely for the fact that for me, as a 12-year-old or 11-year-old at the time, discipline for me was the most sorry accessible um, album for me to get into King Crimson.
Hmm.
So that album, yeah, it holds a bit of a special place. Not to give anything away because I'm not right now, but it does hold a special place for me. And I
Yeah.
did consider buying, ladies and gentlemen, before this is gonna be a whole show. Um, these albums, Discipline and Lark's Tongue and Aspic and Red, all have corresponding box sets. And when we say box sets, we mean box sets in capital letters. The, for example, bear with me, guys. The box set for Red is called The Road to Red. It is a 21 disc set of live recordings of demos. You know, the album itself shows up on disc number 19. Okay. Ergo, the title Road to Red, meaning the road leading up to compositions and re-recordings and rearranging tracks that would eventually end up on the album Red. Featured on that set, I should say, before we get into this, is a concert that they did at Massey Hall in Toronto. Okay.
Yep.
In 1974, 304, I do believe. Okay. Toronto is my territory. It's my city. So, it's just off of Yonge Street, Massey Hall. Beautiful building, beautiful venue for concerts, brilliant acoustics. So I would have killed to see them at Massey Hall at this point, but I digress. Okay. Um, so yes, we are talking massive, massive amounts of unreleased material, of live material, of bootlegged and very badly recorded material. When we say bootleg, we mean bootleg. It's like somebody holding up one of those vintage tape recorders up to a speaker in your house and recording off of that. You know what I mean? And burping all the way through. That's how bad it can be. But for a music collector, these sets, if you're into King Crimson, these sets are worth looking into. So
Absolutely. Especially the stuff from the 73, 74 period where
yeah,
we're totally digressing, but depending on the show, whether they were the headliner or the opener, there's usually one, two, or three pieces that are completely improvisational.
yeah,
And that's where you just see them kind of go without a net. And,
yeah.
there are some points where they say, we know we want to segue into X song, or we're going to do an improv after we end, whatever song. But a lot of the times it's just this open slot where they're just going to follow their muse and go. And sometimes it's the most gentle pastoral kind of thing. And
Yeah.
sometimes it, will blow every follicle of hair off of your body because they're just
If
pedal to the metal and going.
yeah, if this is the right terminology, there's a total dichotomy in terms of you go from, like you said, a beautiful pastoral acoustic passage, or and then it goes right into just a rocker, or just like almost like an industrial piece that will like literally blow you back from your, from your speakers because you don't expect. They go from one extreme to another, and they don't apologize for it. It's what
Oh,
we do, you know.
right.
If there's any theme, to the music, they'll say it's just listen to the album. You'll figure out your own theme. You know what I mean? So, I mean, they basically did whatever the hell they wanted to do, whenever they wanted to do it, how they wanted to do it, and they had made no apologies, especially Robert Fripp.
Yep.
Some people would say a genius. Some people would say very difficult to work with. Some people would say, madman, or, in terms of the way he came up with his arrangements, or the way he wanted to do things. But you know what? Robert Fripp, guitarist, you know, keyboardist, multi-instrumentalist, has, was, and always will be the heart and soul, the essence, the pulse of what is King Crimson.
Agreed.
So,
100%.
you know, but ladies and gentlemen, we've stalled long enough. Ladies and gentlemen, the Music Den brings you King Crimson top 10 albums. And again, I pass the virtual mic over to Jim, and he'll give us his number 10.
All right, we're gonna start back in the olden days of Crimson. We're gonna my number 10 is from 1971. It's the album Islands, which is very much unlike everything else in their very diverse discography.
Yeah.
Islands has a at times sort of a the feeling of a chamber or orchestral quartet. Sometimes it's full-on prog mellotrons and slamming drums. Sometimes it's these funky, twisted blues. But really, there's an immense amount of variety on that record. In the opening piece, Formentera Lady, I think is about 10 odd minutes, and it's a gentle journey along the way, and leads you finally into the Sailor's Tale, which is where the mellotrons and this insanely driving swing drum beat comes in and just blows your speakers out with the intensity of it.
Mhm.
It's quite the opening to a record, and then the side closes with um, a very intimate tale of love gone bad between three people, and it's quite affecting. Yeah, it like I said, it's unlike anything, probably because of the amount of string, horn, and reed orchestration that goes on in there. That's part of the last two tracks of Islands,
Mhm.
and the Song of the Gulls. But it's really really wonderful. On if the rest of the discography weren't so dang strong, Islands would probably be a couple of steps up there. And this is during one of those interim periods where, like you say, you go to the bathroom, you come back, and there's a new vocalist or a new drummer or something.
I mean, hell, you're burping in front of them. They change. I mean, it's like, you could pass gas in front of them, for example, and they've already got somebody new in the band. Um, yeah, this is the lineup that was one of the most short-lived lineups for the band. But and in terms of ranking, I've said this before on many shows. Guys, when you do these lists, just because an album is at number 10 does not mean that you think the album is lacking in any shape, form, or fashion. It's just when you do these lists, you have to put them somewhere, right?
You
It's
gotta, yeah.
what do you do, right? No, it's a good choice. It's a good choice. An unexpected choice, but it's a good choice.
Okay.
My number 10, ladies and gentlemen, is The Power to Believe, released in 2005, February 24th in the UK and March 4th in the US. Produced by Machine, clocking in at 51 minutes and 11 seconds. What I like about this album is it has a beginning, a middle, and an ending. In terms of, Power to Believe Part One, which has the a cappella intro, which has, I guess you call it the modulated voice, like the altered voice, almost robotic voice. I believe it's Adrian Belew on vocals.
Hmm.
This and it's just beautiful, very poignant intro for me. And then you go into talk about from one extreme to another. Then you go into like the industrial tinged, heavily tinged, level five, the instrumental. It's 7 minutes and 17 seconds, just heavy on all fronts, right? Then it goes into, Eyes Wide Open. I'm not going to go into all the tracks, 11 tracks in total. But what I like about this album, and this, the reason why I made my number 10, is because uh, I like the fact that it's got parts one and two and three going, it's like a theme throughout the album.
Hmm.
Basically a start, middle, and an ending. And it's just it's a good album. It's a good rocker. I didn't think I'd like it this much. I would make my list. You know, other songs of note are Electric, the next instrumental. Eyes Wide Open is a good one too. That comes before it. Facts of Life intro, and the Facts of Life that comes after it, So, the Power to Believe part two, So yeah, that's my number 10.
That's a good choice. I have that one coming up in my list. Spoiler. Um, but yeah, Power to Believe is was a great record, and I think one of the things that makes it hold together so well for me, Armando, is part of the reasons you were talking about was that it feels cohesive, in that it's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. There's a thematic line that kind of runs through it. Um, Not as, it's not a concept album, but because of the, repeated use of the haikus, um, it just has 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 it's just feels like a proper thing. It's not just an amorphous collection of songs.
Yeah,
It's its own entity, and yeah, it's a great record.
there's a breadth and a scope to it, like a depth to it
Yep,
on some level. Yeah, yeah.
I like that one. Good choice, sir.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad you approve. I live to make you happy. Okay.
Well,
You're,
now you need to get a better life, son.
there you, I know. I need help. Anyways, you're number 9.
My number nine is the aforementioned album Beat from 1982. I did grow into really enjoying this album once I got my head around the complex musical vocabulary that these guys have. Just um, for folks who don't know, the instrumentation at that time we talked about was, Robert Fripp on guitar, Adrian Belew on guitar, Tony Levin mostly on stick, which if you don't know what a stick is,
Chapman
it's
stick.
a Chapman stick. It's a 10-stringed instrument that is you kind of hold it like a bass, but it acts like a piano in that with one hand you can play the lower register, on the other hand you can play the upper register. So before you even get into the drums, you've got this intense rhythmic complexity intertwining that's going on between essentially four guitarists, with, Fripp doing one part, Ballou doing another part,
Yeah,
and, Levin with two different hands holding everything together. But he doesn't play, it's not a traditional bass rhythm part. I mean, it's not Jamie Jamerson, as awesome as Jamie Jamerson is for Motown. It ain't Motown bass.
yeah.
This is,
No, 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 no,
this
no.
is just some highly complex stuff. And then when you put Bill Bruford on top of it, who, his role as a drummer is not to keep time. His his role is to mess about with rhythm and mess about with time and accent other things that are going on. And so once you get your head around how they sort of build their songs or their jams, it becomes easier to sort of grasp what the heck they're doing.
Yeah,
But now that I've come to appreciate Beat, it's got Sartorian Tangier, Waiting Man, um, Neil and Jack and Me. Those are three of my all-time favorite Crim tracks there. Some great stuff.
hmm. Okay, that's good. It's a good choice. It's a good choice. And between both of us, I mean, we're covering different eras of the band, different, albums, and we're going to have a good cross section here.
Yeah.
So, my number 9, ladies and gentlemen, we must carry on. My my number 9 is In the Wake of Poseidon,
Mm.
released May 15th, 1970. And again, I failed to say all of these releases in the 70s and 80s were released through Island Atlantic, EG Records, you know, throughout their career. Okay, In the Wake of Poseidon, again, released May 15th, 1970, produced by Robert Fripp and Peter Sinfield. The unofficial member of the band, like lyricist of the band for the early albums, clocking in at like 41 minutes and 5 seconds. This is one of those albums, again, that has a beginning, a middle, and an ending. Starts with Peace, a beginning, just with a beautiful, haunting vocal. Uh, Pictures of a City. And this is where how can I put this? This is where the intricacies come in because when you look at a track listing um, for a King Crimson album, you're basically reading a chapter of a book because they'll say Pictures of a City and it's including this. It includes like two or three different tracks in that one track. So Pictures of a City, including 42nd at Treadmill, that kind of thing. In my notes, I have your great horns, wall of sound, a lot of textures, a lot of guitar textures, a lot of wall of guitars
Hmm.
and stuff in terms of their treatments and stuff. Um, Fantastic work. Also you have Cadence and Cascade, nice acoustic passage on that track, as I go down the list here. And then you have the title track clocking in at 8 minutes, 24 seconds, In the Wake of Poseidon. Um, Bathed in Mellotron. There's Mellotron galore. If you love your Mellotron, your this is for you.
Yep.
These albums are for you. Okay. And even the later ones where they do bring in Mellotron, not as much, but it's like Mellotron for the early King Crimson albums is like a staple. It's like a necessary ingredient,
Yes.
to a well-balanced stew. You know what I mean? It's basically, no, it's true. And but throughout the album too, you have these again, you have a beginning, a middle, and ending. You have Peace theme, which is another instrumental. Beautiful guitar passage on that. Cat Food, which it's the one track that what do I have here? Avant-garde piano experimental, in terms of the kind of track it is. And then you know, track 7, The Devil's Triangle, the instrumental, clocking in at a mammoth 11 minutes and 30 seconds. Just beautiful arrangement on this track. Just different textures and highs and lows on this track. And it ends with
Hmm.
Peace and Ending. An end, sorry, which is like another minute and 54 seconds. So you have this again, a beginning, a middle, and an ending
Right.
theme all through the album. So it's a fantastic album. A lot of symphonic references here and classical references in terms of the arrangements. And
Absolutely.
again, King Crimson, this was at a time, I said this before with other shows. This was at a time where record companies would do anything to indulge their artists in order to get product. So if an artist, again, wanted to bring in a camel smoking a cigarette wearing a diaper into the studio to get the music done, the record companies would move heaven and earth in order to get it done.
Okay.
Because
Yep.
they were thinking, we need product, we got to get them going. Let's do what they want, a camel wearing a diaper, smoking a cigarette with sunglasses on. We'll do it. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So this is a fantastic album. If you want an album that is more of avant-garde, acoustic based, and also with I would say symphonic tinges, heavy tinges, this is for you. So that's my number 9. In the Wake of Poseidon.
Oh, all right. So if I may, uh, Poseidon was actually my number 13 of the 13 albums that they had. Poseidon
Really?
was at the bottom. But again, something's got to be at the bottom. The whole discography is really, really strong. Um, the two of the key tracks on Poseidon were basically from the original King Crimson, you know, we'll call it quintet when you include Peter Sinfield,
Yeah.
from 1969. Uh, Pictures of a City was something that they were playing live in '69 when they did their tour of the States. And
Hmm.
then even throughout their live shows in 1969, usually their encore was Gustav Holst's Mars. And that's the Devil's Triangle is a rearrangement of Mars. So there's a lot about Poseidon that's feels familiar and feels like sort of the classic 1969 Krim. I mean it's really good stuff. I guess for me, I have it on the bottom because maybe it felt most derivative, like been there before, done that.
Okay,
But
fair enough.
again, we're picking 10 out of 13. So
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it is hard again to put these albums in a list. If we were doing the entire 13, you know what I mean? Like maybe it would have ranked higher. Who knows? I mean, you know,
yeah,
but so you're number eight.
my number eight. Let's jump forward in the Crimson timeline again, just ping ponging around. We're going to go all the way to 2000, and this will be the construction of light. Um, so once again, Robert Fripp, who is the constant in all this, Adrian Belew, and Trey Gunn on
Base.
I'll call it bass-like things, and then Pat Mastelotto on drums.
Mhm.
Um, so the construction of light, it's got one of my top five, if not three, Crimson songs on it for me all time, which is the title track, Construction of Light. It's got the most amazing bass part that, I'll stack it up against Jocko or Victor Wooten or any of those guys.
Really?
It's an amazingly composed piece. Tony Levin, in one of his later periods of being with the band, when he had to learn Construction of Light, he's like, "This is one of the hardest things I've ever had to learn in my life." And this is Tony Levin saying it,
Oh
who's,
my God. Yeah, if he's saying it,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. So, and it's just this knotty, like a Gordian knot, um, interweaving, thorny piece of a bass line that just is the glue that holds the whole first half of this composition together.
Hmm.
Um, and it's just amazing, amazing piece. This album was recorded without being road tested, and I think that kind of is a detriment to it. But there is really kind of a power and a ferocity um, to this record that I enjoy. There are a lot of people who kind of wince at the electronic drum sound that's there. Um,
Hmm.
they tried to improve on that when they did the re-release in like 2015 or so. I think they swapped out the drum sounds as much as they could. Um,
Okay.
but a lot of the construction of light was kind of developed through the research and development period that Krim had, where they broke into these different kind of fractal bands, which they went on the road as projects one, two, three, and four.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's where there were nights that were completely improvised, or there were nights where they had like it's like a jazz band where you've got some basic themes and heads that you're gonna kind of blow off of, and they did.
Mhm.
Um, I was lucky enough to see Project Two and Project Four, and Project Four to me is maybe the best Crimson show I've ever seen. Um,
Okay.
but Construction of Light, again, controversial for a lot of people, but the title track and Lark's Tongues and Aspect 4 is just a brain bender of a tune with both Fripp and Ballou delivering these unbelievable guitar passages and solos, and then also Fractured, which is kind of a revisit of the great tune Fracture from '74, um, or '73, excuse me. Great stuff. Some unbelievable guitar playing going on that record.
Hmm.
My number eight.
Okay. Okay. Good choice. Good choice. See, so far we haven't called out the same one for our numbers. That's good. Same
Not
album.
yeah, yeah.
That's good. My number eight is probably gonna freak out some people that it's so low, but I get shit on this channel all the time. What are you gonna do, right? For my
More
choices.
fodder.
There you go. There you go. Bring it on, guys. My number eight is Red. Released October 1st, 1974, clocking in at 39 minutes, 57 seconds, produced by King Crimson. This is the last album that they would release as a trio. At this point, David Cross was out. The management, I don't know if it was the management or the band that wanted him out, but one of Robert Fripp's
It was the band.
was the band.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. And Fripp left it up to the management to tell David Cross, and he didn't want to be around. He went on vacation, and one of the stipulations was you need to tell him while I'm away because I don't want to come back and deal with it. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with any drama. This was the last album to be released until they went on their 7-year hiatus before Discipline came out. Fantastic album, experimental. Parts were recorded live. The track Providence was recorded live, I do believe.
Yep.
Starts off with the instrumental Red. And this is what I like about this band. They weren't afraid to do 2 or 3 or 4 instrumentals back to back on an album. You know what I mean? If what they were doing musically called for them to just do an instrumental piece with no vocals, that's what they did. They didn't give a shit. They did whatever the hell they wanted to do, right? With no apologies.
Yep.
In my notes, I have Red as a straightforward rocker, fantastic track. All these tracks are lengthy, clocking at like 6 minutes and change, etc. So next up is Fallen Angel. Uh, texture, great texture guitars on the intro, nice cornet. Next one up, track 3 is One More Red Nightmare. In my notes, I have very percussive, experimental in arrangement and time signatures on this. Providence is next, another instrumental. Beautiful violin intro, pure experimentation on
Yeah,
this.
it's a complete improvisation.
It's
That
just all over the
that
place.
yeah, that's one of those tunes where, they were coming out of, they knew coming out of a tune called Easy Money that they were going to do an improvisation, but that's the
Yeah,
only roadmap that they had.
yeah,
Sometimes when they come out of Easy Money, they keep going with the pedal to the metal, and
yeah,
sometimes they just let it drop and sort of build up again, which is what happened here.
yeah,
Some nights the bass takes the lead, some nights it's the violin, sometimes it's a guitar figure or
yeah,
mellotron. I mean, it's just they're just going for it, and I love that about
yeah,
Crimson.
yeah.
Absolutely
No, it's
love it.
true. It's true. And also my notes here for Providence, I have guitars bordering on feedback. Nice guitar tone from Fripp. Next up is Starless, um, clocking in at a mammoth 12 minutes and 18 seconds. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
like epic, right? Um, Great Mellotron. Again, Mellotron galore. I'm telling you, like all over the place on these albums. Um,
Yeah.
Thick guitar tone. You know, what I like too is on this track you have the bass and the guitar doing the melody counter melody, kind of going off
Hmm.
one another and kind of
Yeah.
answering one another. Just great. And it builds in intensity and it has multi sections and different time signatures on this track. Just again,
Right.
experimentation doesn't even begin to describe it. You know what I mean? Like we said before, in terms of music genres, there's Zappa, you know what I mean? And then there's Crimson, it's like Crimson were a musical genre onto themselves, right? So,
Absolutely.
and yeah, that's my number eight, Red.
That's a great one. I'm going to save my comments because I'll have more to say about it.
Of course, of course, of course. Well,
So,
again, you know, when you do these lists, again, there's no right or wrong answer, right? It's just, how do you do this? How do you put these lists together. But you know what? You do the best you can. And
Absolutely.
anyways,
And people in the comments can tell us where we're wrong because the commenter clearly is right.
of course, of course. Please feel free to tell us if we're wrong, or if we're making mistakes, or if I've been living under a rock, which is what I've been told before. But anyways, that's another issue altogether. Um, so you're number seven.
My number seven, carrying on from the construction of light, we go to their next album, which you've already mentioned, The Power to Believe. That's my number seven.
Okay.
And I think to me, they're very, very close. And the thing I think that tips Power to Believe into a higher spot for me is that cohesion that we talked about earlier. Um, there's just something about the way that it flows as an album, which works, you know, better for me than the flow of Construction of Light, even though I'm very passionate about a lot of the tunes on that album. The
Hmm.
Power to Believe just feels like a um, a more complete album, to me. Again, same lineup: Fripp, Ballou, Gunn, Mastelotto. This time, all the material is road tested, and they know what they're playing. There's an authority to it that's kind of missing from Construction of Light, and I think it makes it a lot more powerful album.
Hmm.
So that's my number seven for me.
Good choice. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
In the documentary that was released a couple of years back, or about a year and a half ago, I should say,
Hmm.
for the in the Curly Crimson King, the 50th
Crimson
anniversary.
at 50.
Yeah, Crimson at
Yeah.
50. And it took me forever to get that set, by the way, guys. It really did. Um, Fripp has said that Adrian Ballou, um, and I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said that Adrian Ballou did not know how to be part of an ensemble.
I'd say that's fair.
And when I saw that, and then they told Adrian Ballou his comment. Adrian Ballou was like, he said that about me? Really? Like, okay, why would you say that's fair?
Oh boy. All right. I'm gonna.
Give me
This is this is
the
this is
bridge version.
tiptoeing. This is tiptoeing into drama, which
Okay.
I don't really like to do. But
Okay.
basically, I think where I'll say it this way: when Fripp reformed Crimson in 2013, and they ended up touring from 2014 through 2021,
Okay.
he specifically did not see Adrian as part of that lineup because to him, Adrian was a front man. What Fripp had envisioned for this version of Crimson was something very much more orchestral in nature, where
I can
you
see
had
that.
seven or sometimes eight people, and basically they were treated like orchestra members. There wasn't a front man. The front of the stage was three drummers, for crying out loud.
That's
The
right.
back riser is where Jocko Jaxis, the guy who was the singer, was basically stationed back there next to Fripp on the back riser in the back line. So there was no showboating. I mean, and when I say showboating, Baloo is a flamboyant performer because he enjoys music. He
Okay.
just loves it and exudes joy as he plays. So that comes out, with him being a front man, he's just exuberant. And I
Okay.
think that and I think Fripp's comment has more to do with the fact that Adrian doesn't know how to bottle that up and just be one of the band.
I hear you. I hear what you're saying. Yeah. Okay.
I think he probably did back in the day when he was touring with Bowie or Zappa
Uh,
or Talking Heads. But as he started to grow more confident in what he could do, he
Yeah.
became more exuberant. And I think he just sees himself less as an ensemble guy and more of a leader. So
Yeah.
that's the best way that I could put it without getting, into the
No, it's
inter-politics of what
that's
happened.
fair. That's fair. No, I just remember watching the documentary and hearing that, and it's just like, okay, that's quite the little snapback at him, in terms of why is he, of his opinion of him. So I just want to get your opinion of it, and you could be right. You could very well be right about that. So
Well, my source is, if I can, the book by Sid Smith called "In the Court of the Crimson King," which is, Robert Fripp jokingly calls it the toxic tome because it just goes into so much, you know, memories both on stage and off stage, all the office politics, all the interband politics
yeah,
that just for Fripp made Crimson sometimes a very unenjoyable experience. So I'm gonna treat that book, which again, highly recommended. Um,
I'm gonna get that book.
Sid Smith is the author. Burning Shed is where you can get it, and yeah, they talk about that, pretty extensively and a lot more.
Okay, okay, no, good to know. Good to know. All right, my number seven, ladies and gentlemen, is Starless and Bible Black. Released March 29th, 1974. Again, one or two albums released by King Crimson at this point, produced by King Crimson, clocking in at 46 minutes and 41 seconds. Um, Fantastic album,
Mm.
experimentation all over the place. Starts off with The Great Deceiver. In my notes, I have a wall of sound, multi sections, very experimental. Um, and to me, John Wetton's vocals are sort of jarring. And when I mean by that, I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's just like some of his vocal lines are sort of like to me they come at me out of the blue, and almost like what the hell am I what am I hearing him say, kind of a thing. It really
Very forceful,
very
charismatic singer. Yeah.
yes, in on this track. Um Other songs of note are, track two, Lament, with my notes have calm chords on intro, textured wall of melodies. What I also like about Crimson as a band in terms of their song compositions, their music compositions, is they have a lot of melody and counter melody going on, a lot of
Hmm.
pulling give and take in terms of the melody structures. And there's melodies within the melodies. You know what I mean? Like they'll go off on different tangents and stuff. Multiple time signatures on this track, and then it just comes to a dead stop, you know, for Lament. And the next one, we'll let you know the instrumental, slow atmospheric intro on this one. Uh, Fantastic combination of bass, guitar, and synths. Heavy on the experimentation. Like
It's
like
another improvised track.
yeah, yeah. Just you can tell, right? Other songs
Yeah.
of note are the Night Watch, slow build of textures, instrumentation, great guitar, tone, a nice melody, and Trio is another instrumental. A lot of instrumentals with this band,
Yes.
like all over the place. On Trio, you have in my notes I have slow build of violin, bass, and mellotron. Nice melody, counter melody on the track. The Mincer is another good one. Very percussion oriented, while guitar textures on this track. And Starless and Bible Black, 9 minutes, 11 seconds. Great instrumental. Slow, oh, a lot of notes here. I'm not going to read them all. It's a lot of work here, guys. Um, just it's a fantastic album, very experimental. There's the instrumental track, the two instrumental tracks that are on side two of Starless and Bubba Black. You have Starless, the title track, and you have Fractured, which is another instrumental, clocking in at a mammoth 11 minutes and 14 seconds. Again, these guys were not afraid to experiment. And what you come to expect from King Crimson with the catalog is the unexpected. Okay. That's that should be the mantra, right? And in Fractured, in my notes here, you have slow build of guitar, heavy bass and drums, change in tempo, brooding textures, use of vibraphone that I can hear, which from my, getting ready for a Frank Zappa top 10 albums, I hear a lot of vibraphone when it's not even there, for God's sake, half the time. Um, nice use of mellotron, jarring changes in sections, just like from one section to another. But
Yeah.
it's a fantastic album. It's experimental, and I'm surprised it's lower on the list, but more to come on that. So that's my number seven.
Again, speaks to the strength of the catalog, that something like that can be so low.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I mean, I can understand how some people could listen to this and think, "What the hell is this?" But you know what? I think it's fantastic. You just have to open your mind and just let all possibilities in. You know what I mean? In terms
Yes,
of music. So,
exactly. Very much like the experience I had listening to Beat, where I first heard it, it's like, I have no context for this. But as you listen to it more, if you give yourself time with it, you'll become more comfortable with it, and then you can figure out where to hook into.
yeah, and to be fair, I think the difference musically between discipline and beat, I think that was done purposely, just to sort of shake it up a little bit and to keep
Okay.
everybody on their toes. Um, I could be wrong, but you know what? This is King Crimson, so there you go. There you go.
If Beat is further on your list, let's talk a little bit more about that.
We shall see. We shall see, ladies and gentlemen. So next up, your number six.
Number six, 1973, Lark's Tongues in Aspic.
Uh-huh.
So this is the quintet record, which is the 73-74 band plus an additional percussionist named Jamie Muir. Um, Jamie Muir was a wild man, literally a wild man. His percussion kit probably took up 60 to 70% of the band's resources. And, he would stalk around the stage, biting down blood capsules, wearing a loincloth and swinging chains around
Yeah,
as part of his thing. And it, very, very wild. And the album reflects that. Um, um, Gosh, there's only 6 tracks on here. Um, but they're all making a statement. They're all very powerful. This is very much Crimson kind of taking a left turn after Islands and becoming a lot more, um, becoming a lot darker,
yeah,
but also Fripp, I think, is diving more into some avant-garde classical music and sort of bringing that in compositionally for what he wants to do.
yeah,
Um, and Man, the band is just it's a furious band. I I prefer the 73-74 version of this period of King Crimson,
okay,
um, just because I think there's a little more focus to it. Um, they were, when they were playing gigs and they were sort of finding their feet, you know, they would play 2 hour gigs and an hour of it would be improv, if not more, just because they were really trying to explore where the music and the muse was taking them.
yeah,
The album Lark's Tongues does have a focus to it. It's not just chaos, but um, but you can hear that chaos just sort of bubbling under the surface
yeah,
in tracks like part one of Lark's Tongues, um, the talking drum, same same thing there. A great. great record, great record, but something has to go below number five, and this was the loser.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. No, I get it. I get it. Yeah, I have the Lark's Tongue and Aspic box set. And when I've said before how some of the recordings, the live recordings, are done like with a, a portable tape recorder,
Yeah,
this is exactly what it is because some of the recordings are just very poor, very poor.
they're barely listenable.
Barely, but you can hear slowly what, you know, what is going to become Lark's Tongue and Aspic at some point. It's like a building blocks kind of a thing, right?
Right.
So, and I got it for a good price. It's like under $100, so I was like, I snatched it up.
And
Um,
again, that's like a 12 or 13 disc box, right?
yeah, each of these, I think it's like, yeah, 15,
Yeah.
and it's quite intense. It's quite immersive. Um, which all these sets are. Just a little side note, the Discipline box set, if you get that, you'll also get Beat and Three of a Perfect Pair included in the box set. So um, there you go. So you really do get bang for your buck for the when you get these sets. My number six, ladies and gentlemen, is Three of a Perfect Pair, released March 29th, 1984. The last of the trilogy of you know of this configuration, produced by King Crimson, clocking in at 41 minutes and 15 seconds, 9 tracks. Um, Good album, but I've heard by some people that they say this is the least successful of the three albums from that time period.
Hmm.
I don't know if that's the case. I do like it. I mean, you have, in my notes, I have you like the title track, intricate drum pattern, uh, mashed up soundscapes. A lot of soundscapes on this, like in terms of textured guitars,
Hmm.
Frettronics, as they call it. Model Man is another one, a great melody, melody you know, uh, on this track. Distorted guitar tone. I have um, Sleepless, which I believe was a single from the album.
Yeah.
Uh, Frenetic bass line, rhythmic percussion, sparse drums.
Hmm.
That's what I like about these three albums is that the drum patterns were very sparse.
Yeah.
They weren't sort of over like, dubbing a lot of uh, drum tracks and percussion tracks that I could hear. There's a lot of play. There's a lot of space in the drumming on these albums. Um,
Right.
the next track, "Man with an Open Heart," steady drum rhythm. And again, a lot of distorted guitar tone on this track.
Hmm.
Um, the next track, the instrumental, uh, I don't know how you pronounce this, Nuages or
I think
that
so.
in brackets that which passes like clouds. Um, Fantastic instrumental, rhythmic drum pattern, atmospheric synth passages, rich guitar tone on this track. Just it's a good album. It's solid. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, and then it ends off with the instrumental of Lark's Tongues and Aspic 3. And if you're, clocking in at 6 minutes and 5 seconds, if you're thinking that that they're reverting back to Lark's Tongues and Aspic, the album, they're not. It's a complete, from my ears, from my untrained ears, it's a complete departure musically as to what they were doing in the 70s. But, in my notes I have repetitive guitar passage, short, sharp guitar chords, multiple sections, part experimentation with guitar soundscapes, just all over the place. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
and there's also the instrumental before that, No Warning, right? So
Hmm.
track 8 and 9. So I mean, just all over the place. You know what I mean? There's no rhyme or reason to what King Crimson did. They just did again whatever the hell they wanted to do. So that's my number six.
Great choice. Yeah, Three of a Perfect Pair is a really, really good album. I'm not one of those people who feels like it's the weakest of that trilogy.
Okay. Well, yeah. I think hmm, for me, I think yeah, I think you have discipline, then you have beat, and then you have three of a perfect pair, where I'll put discipline.
Hmm.
Myself, that's my opinion, but to my untrained ear, right? So then there you go. So you're number five.
My number five, it's what you talked about a couple of records ago. Starless and Bible Black is my number five.
Okay.
Um, I was taking a few notes while you were talking so I could, kind of figure out how I wanted to complement what you were saying. We were talking before about how, Crimson would come out of tunes and then they would go straight into improvisations. We talked about Providence, which is on Red. You were talking about that. And then We'll Let You Know on Starless and Bible Black. Those are both improvs that came out of the same song.
Okay.
So the song Easy Money, which is on Lark's Tongues, they play that live, and at the end of it, they would, drift into improvisation territory.
Mm.
Providence and We'll Let You Know, two very, very different kinds of tracks. So to me, it just kind of speaks more of the untamed variety that Crimson in 73 and 74 had.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of diversity there.
Yeah.
Um, Trio, the tune you talked about, which is a very quiet violin and mellotron driven tune. It's mellotron, violin, and bass.
Yeah.
That's it. And so you're saying that Trio, okay, it's called Trio because Bruford's not on it. Bruford is actually on it. I mean, this is another track, another improv track recorded live. When they were recording it, Bruford could not think of anything to add. So he just sat on his drum stool with his hands and his drumsticks crossed across his chest, and that's how he just held it through the whole thing
Mhm.
because he could not think of anything to add to what was being done by the other three guys. And so he Fripp gives him composition credit for what Fripp calls his admirable restraint. And I
Okay.
just think it's amazing. The other note that I'll put on there, Fracture, the end tune, um, has a guitar part that Fripp himself, the composer and the player of that tune, he calls it almost impossible to play. Now he does call it impossible, but yet he does it and other people do it. I don't know how. I mean, I'm not a guitarist, but just watching it, um, it just seems incredible how he can have those many notes in such metronomic precision with this cross picking that goes on for such a long time. His hand, his right hand is doing this amazing cross picking, and his left hand is all over that guitar neck.
Yeah. All over the fretboard. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So it's an amazing piece. Fracture is, one of the signature King Crimson tracks.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that concludes my number five, Starless and Bible Black.
Cool. Cool. No, it's a good choice. It's a good choice. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Um, Bill Bruford left Yes, because he felt that the music that Yes was doing wasn't as challenging as he wanted it to be. When when he joined King Crimson, I mean, people were saying, "Oh, Yes, like how could they not be challenging? How could you call them not challenging enough for you? Like this is Yes we're talking about." But he wanted to challenge himself musically. What do you think he brought to listen to me, Yes. What do you think he brought to King Crimson as a drummer percussionist?
Well, as I understand it, Bruford's underlying passion is jazz. And
Okay. Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
think he brought this kind of litheness to Crimson, as well as this just openness to kind of see where music would take him. Bruford has gone on record crediting Jamie Muir, the percussionist that was with Crimson for a short time, as saying that Jamie really opened my ears to different things that could happen. So I think what Bruford brought was, a jazz sensibility, an openness to explore things, and an ability to um, be patient with where the music was going to take him. And plus, I think there was also just the fact that he had an urgency. I mean, part of his frustration with Yes was they would just argue about everything, and it would take them
Yes. Yeah.
forever to put something together. And
Yeah.
they have a recording date that's starts at noon, and Ruford was complaining that Chris Squire would roll in around 3 or 5. So he hated that kind of
Yeah.
unprofessionalism.
Or he would fall asleep on the couch in the studio and wake up at 4 a.m. and they would still be arguing over the same, musical passage that they wanted to get down, like how they wanted to mix it and stuff. So
Yeah.
that was the frustration. But
Hmm.
I get that. I get that.
Yeah,
Well,
I
it's
think that
good.
there's another Bruford quote that comes to mind where, there was all this argument in Yes about whether, something should be in this key or that key. And he said in Crimson, Fripp just expected everyone to know.
Yeah.
So there was just this sense of you needed to be so in tune with what you were doing musically that you just, got exactly what where you were supposed to be, what was supposed to follow, how it was going to carry, the tune forward.
Yeah. 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 No, it's true. It's true. No, I just want to get your opinion and then get your insight as to what you thought. And well, thank you for that.
Yeah, one guy's opinion. Again, commenters can tell me where I'm wrong.
There you go. There you go. Put your comments down below.
Yep.
Uh, but be nice.
Hey,
Uh,
exactly. We're
there you
nice to
go.
you.
There you go.
Be nice to us.
Please, please. Fair enough. My number five, ladies and gentlemen, is, and this is gonna shock some people, in the court of the Crimson King.
I'm sorry.
In the
What was
court
that?
of the Yeah,
I
yeah, I get the joke. I get the joke. In the court of the Crimson King. Okay. Number five. Released October 10th, 1969. Again, produced by the band. Uh, clocking in at 43 minutes, 54 seconds. Now, first of all, when I first heard this album a couple of years ago, the lead off track, 21st Century Schizoid Man. I heard the first opening notes of, like the horns and the guitars and it was just like, what, it was like a wall of sound, like just like a wall of textured sound and feedback to me. I could not
hmm
make heads or tails of it. And then you have Greg Lake coming in with the, I guess, like mashed up vocals, like the way they did it, right? Coming through like an old transistor radio kind of feedback kind of feel.
Yeah.
I could not get into that. I was like, okay, I'm done. Boom. I couldn't get into it.
Uh-huh.
But I've grown since then. I've changed a little bit since then.
You've
I
evolved.
do, I've evolved. Some people have said I've devolved, but I've
Well,
evolved. That's a matter of opinion, guys. But no, I think it's a fantastic album. Um, do I think it's overplayed as an album? Yeah, it's overplayed, but there's a reason for it. It's fantastic. It is rock, it is jazz, it is experimentation, it's all of the above. It's emotion, it is heart, it is blood, sweat, and tears. It is all of that mixed into one. Okay, it starts off with 21st Century Schizoid Man. And this is where, these tracks, when you look at the track listing, it would say including and in my notes I have, okay, 7 minutes, 24 seconds of 21st Century Schizoid Man. wall of guitars, horns, intricate time signatures, along with the, mashed up vocals I call of Greg Lake. And after that, you have I Talk to the Wind, okay, which is the complete opposite of what you just heard. So there you go,
Yeah.
from one extreme to another, right? Written by Ian
Yep.
McDonald and Peter Sinfield. In my notes, I have a nice respite from the previous track. Great
Hmm.
flute, and then you have Epitaph clocking in at 8 minutes, 47 seconds. Okay, including, you know, March for No Reason and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Very emotional vocal on this track. Great mellotron. There's great mellotron. Oh, it's dripping with mellotron. It is saturated in mellotron. It unfucking believable about how much mellotron's on this album.
It's a monster of a track.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. Great use of timpani on this track. The swell of mellotrons on this track. Just, you know, use of bass clarinet. But at the root of this track is a man lyrically saying, "We failed.
Yeah. Right.
We failed as a society, as mankind. We have failed. We have been given this gift to live our lives and live in a community, in a society where we love one another, we accept one another wholeheartedly, regardless of race, religion, whatever, political beliefs. And in the end, we screwed up and we
Yep.
failed. And he's literally, from my point of view, he's literally crying that he's
It's
failed.
despair. Yeah.
It's despair. He's falling into himself in terms of being so depressed as to looking at the ruin around him that's happened, and how can he fix it. And he's come to the realization that he can't, because he's just one person. It is
Yep.
gut wrenching. It is
Yeah.
emotional, gut wrenching. Like, I'm just like, my God, I'm hearing this and I'm thinking, okay, I'm ready for the rest of my day. Like, how the hell am I going to go on from listening to
I
this
need to
track?
put on some ABBA to change the tone.
Exactly, from one extreme to another, right?
Yes.
Although ABBA had their
Totally
deep
fine.
moments as well. Not, we won't go into that. That's
That's
another
that's
show.
another episode you've already done.
That's another show. Please watch. It's a wonderful show. All right. And again, continuing with the album, we have Moonchild, again, another massive 12 minutes and 13 seconds, with guitar treatments, fantastic flute, tight percussion arrangements, gentle guitar. And then, the Core of the Crimson King, another 9 minutes, 25 seconds, including the return of the Fire Witch and the dance of the puppets, bathed in Mellotron. Again,
Yeah.
dripping in Mellotron, just this whole bloody album. Fantastic use of harpsichord, flute, very grand, very dramatic, from this track. Just amazing, amazing. Um, the only reason why, well, one of the reasons why for me is that it's number five. I mean, it's still high on the list, but to me, it is overplayed. It is overplayed. I mean, 21st Century Schizoid Man is still played on FM classic rock radio today, all over the world, you know.
Hmm.
Um, it is good. It is good. It's a fantastic album. Um, is it a bit much for some people that are just getting into King Crimson? Yeah. Um, but it is still a fantastic album. So
So would you, there's a lot of people that would
yeah,
point to this album and say, this is where prog rock began. I mean, they would say that there's little pieces of it that were evident here and here and here and here, but it all coalesced and sort of became a genre with this album. What's your thoughts on that?
I would agree. I
Okay.
would agree. I know I have a question for you after my answer. Um,
Okay.
That's what we do, ladies and gentlemen. We ask each other questions and we engage and we have thoughtful conversation and contemplation. Um,
Scintillating even.
there you go. There you go. There you go. Um, I do believe that this is the one album where they said, pardon my language, they said, fuck it. Let's throw everything in the blender and see what comes out. Right?
Yeah,
Everything goes in the pot. Everything goes in the pot. The rule
right.
is there are no rules. Right? And this is the one album, uh, being released in 1969. This is the one album that, yes, that started this movement in terms of what is known as progressive rock. Um, my question to you is,
Mhm.
when during my workout yesterday, I was asked by the guy that was assisting me with my workout, what is in fact progressive rock? So what is your take on what is progressive rock?
Oh my gosh.
I'll
Um,
give you my view of progressive rock. I'm going to take a page from David Gilmour's book. My explanation of progressive rock is one simple sentence: there are no rules.
it's pretty fair.
What is your
I
explanation or your version of progressive rock? What is your take on that?
I would say you know it when you hear it, and you know it because it doesn't sound like anything else, or it sounds like everything else all at once.
Okay.
Um, I think Gilmore is a lot more concise and precise than I am.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I think No Rules is a great way to talk about it. And um, when you went through the prog album series with Bill, I mean, there's all kinds of styles in there.
Yeah.
It's very hard to I guess what I mean to say is that the landscape for progressive is um,
So
almost
why?
as wide as jazz, almost.
Yeah.
Um, there are bands that, Supertramp is one that comes to mind. Are they prog or are they not? Were they prog and did they become more commercial? Some people would throw Genesis in there. People would say, "Oh yeah, Yes was prog until they did 90125." Or is 90125 still prog? I mean, who done it on Abacab? Is that prog? I mean, it's difficult.
Yeah.
It's very difficult for me to define it. I think it's easier to kind of
And
point to what prog isn't. Like
yeah.
Billy Joel is not,
Yeah. And
and I love Billy Joel, but
just to add to that, some people would say that Queen 2 is prog. More to follow
hmm,
on that later. But I mean, yeah, I hear you. I just want to get your take because when Phil yesterday during my workout was asking me, I was telling him that we were going to do this show because his father, this is how young he is, his father has um, subscribed to the channel and he likes the stuff that we're doing. So, okay, nothing like feeling old when someone tells you that their father likes they're doing, what you're doing.
yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And he asked me, what is prog music? I said, well, I gave him, like extended compositions, intricate time signatures, use of mellotron, which I had to tell him what a mellotron was because he didn't know what a mellotron was. So,
Hmm.
yeah, it went on a lot longer than I expected it to in terms of the explanation. But I wanted to get your point of view of what, in your opinion, is prog music. So, and you gave
Yeah, I
the
guess
answer.
it's one of those things where words would fail. So it's almost like, here's a very small stack of records of what prog music is, and certainly one of those is going to be in the Court of the Crimson King.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I agree. So, okay, we must carry on, ladies and gentlemen. We are at number four.
We
So,
are. So my number six is Lark's Tongues. My number five is Starless in Bible Black.
okay.
Armando Venditti.
Okay.
For a gajillion dollars, what do you guess my number four is?
I would have no idea.
Oh, come on, brother. I'm feeding it to you. Larks, Starless and Bible Black. What's the album that comes after Starless and Bible Black?
Oh my God. Red.
Yes, my number four is Red.
There we go.
There we are.
There you
And
go.
uh, and we talked about Red a lot already. Um, I'm trying to think of what else to add. Oh, um, the final track, Starless, which is not found on the Starless and Bible Black album, but
That's
does have
right.
the lyric Starless and Bible Black in it. Very confusing times. Um, Starless is one of those tracks that usually shows up on the list of like the most influential prog tracks ever. I mean, it's usually everyone's list in their top 10. They're going to have Schizoid Man, they're going to have Close to the Edge, they're going to have Supper's Ready, and they're going to have Starless
Yeah.
because it's just this mammoth track that just has this beautiful haunting melody that starts, it's in the middle, and it has this powerful, conclusion restatement to it. One of the greatest things about this track to me is the middle transition between the song oriented part of the album and the just freak out blowout at the end of it, which is the whole middle section is basically I don't know if it's one note that Fripp is, or like one chord or what it is, but Fripp is basically playing this guitar figure that escalates, grows, but it lasts for like 2 or 3 minutes. And underneath it all is Wetton and Bruford just going nuts on bass and drums, just this intricate little interplay that doesn't, the guitar figure is holding down the rhythm, which I think is in seven, and the bass and the drums are kind of all over the place. Um, yeah, I mean, Wetton has a pattern that he's holding to as well, but he's dancing all over the place, very similar to how Chris Squire does in Yes Tracks.
Mhm.
You can say the bass line for Roundabout is very repetitive, but Squire is messing with it the whole time. Well, Wetton is messing with this figure in seven as well. And in the meantime, Bruford is messing with him. It's like the whole thing feels like it's about to collapse because it just feels like time is just sort of falling apart, around you, while this guitar figure, this repeating motif, is just becoming more and more um, acidic and intense and like unstoppable. It's
Mhm.
it's it's a song that just goes on this build until it just peaks, and then it just goes, a million miles an hour to the end.
Yeah.
It's an absolutely phenomenal track. So Red is very high on my list for Starless, and also for One More Red Nightmare, where Bruford kind of breaks out his inner Elvin Jones and Billy Cobham, and it's just a monster on the drum kit. It's not like Neil Peart monster,
No.
but it's just the
No,
way
no, no,
he's
not at all.
attacking those cymbals and just getting the rhythm out of it is just unrelenting.
Yeah.
Um, fantastic, two fantastic tunes from my number four album, which is Red.
If I was to use the term orchestrated chaos, would that fit what how you would describe Red?
Oh yeah,
It's
absolutely.
When what you were describing was Starless, I was trying to think how could you wrap all that up into like two words? And the only thing I could think of was orchestrated chaos.
That's yeah,
You know,
that's
I
very
mean, I
well
could just
described.
yeah. No, it's good. It's good. It's good. My number four, ladies and gentlemen, we must carry on. Um, was an album that I didn't think was going to be as high as it is on the on my list. And my number four is Thrack.
Hey, look at that.
Released April 3rd, 1995. Produced by the band and Canadian producer David Bottrell, who also worked with Dream Theater on, scenes from a night, Metropolis Part Two, which is my favorite Dream Theater album. Spoiler alert. Um, 15 tracks and all. A fantastic album. When I was looking it up and reading up on it, it was given the genre of industrial. I'd say it borders on industrial. I don't say
Yeah,
it's fully fledged industrial.
yeah.
Um, 15 tracks and all. I'm not going to go through all 15 tracks. I have notes for every track. Believe me, I was busy, but I'm not going to go through 15 tracks. But I will say it starts off with the instrumental Vroom, all in capitals, by the way. Um,
Three O's.
yes, three O's. Great Mellotron intro. Again, here comes the Mellotron. Great Mellotron intro. Band does come in heavy, thick guitar tone, melodic section, more emphasis on, in my notes, I have more emphasis on lyrics and guitars than drums. This is what I like about Bill Bruford's playing too. It's again very sparse. I mean, like he's not
Hmm.
heavy-handed on the drumming. I mean, he might
Right.
be, but that's the trick. Laying down something that's complex and intricate, but making it sound simple and sparse.
Hmm.
There's the trick. And how many of you out there can do it in terms of doing that, right? Um, you know, um, Fantastic. Other songs to note are Dinosaur. Again, Washington Mellotron, rhythm guitar, rhythm drum pattern on this, very rhythmic. Short guitar chords on that. Great, nice guitar and Mellotron break on that track. Very symphonic in sections and nice Mellotron on the outro. As I scroll down here, I have notes here, guys. Boom, another instrumental,
Oh, love that.
slow atmospheric build, very sparse percussion, and near the end, the drums do take over. The another instrumental is the title track of the album, heavy guitar chords mixed with drums. This is the one track that's got the industrial feel to it. Uh,
Yeah.
and almost has like a battle theme to it, in terms of the arrangement. Um, Inner Garden 1, you know, slow, in my notes, slow measure guitar passage, um, almost has a pleading vocal to it. I can't explain it any better than that in terms
Hmm.
of blues delivery. Another good track is People, funky rhythm, more accessible track. On the arrangement and stuff. So yeah, that's 8 out of the 15. It's a 15 track album. It's fantastic. I thought it was going to be lower on my list, but this
Hmm.
is more accessible than I thought it would be, and you really need to check it out. I didn't even know this album existed. You can get this on Amazon. You can get this on Discogs, obviously. Um, and if your local record store has a good back catalog section, go for it. Get this album, crank it up. You won't not be disappointed. That's my number four track.
That's a nice one. Yeah, Thrack just missed the top 10 for me.
Oh, for
Just missed the
shame.
top.
For
Well,
shame. My
yeah,
God.
because I know because the other ones in my top 10 are all garbage. So,
No, I didn't. Go
no, let's talk about Thrack a little bit.
ahead.
First of all,
Would you like to know? No, go ahead. Go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
think
Go ahead.
I think people might, if they're not already aware, they might be interested to know that the album contains two guitarists, two drummers, and two bass players.
That's right.
So it's
That's
the
right.
80s configuration
Yeah.
plus Trey Gunn
And
on
Pat Mastelotto.
Pat Mastelotto, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That's right.
um, the the industrial sounding track, which is the title cut Thrack, was a jumping off point live for them to get into improv territory. Not in the same vein as the 73, 74 band, but it was a period they were a little less structured, but there would be similar themes that they would kind of do night to night. But again, it was usually end up in the same place of sort of repeating that track theme, the thrack theme.
Yeah.
Um, there, they put out an album after Thrack, one of the live albums called Thrack Attack, which was a compilation, well, an assembly of various bits from various different improvs throughout like the middle of the whole Thrack tour.
Hmm.
And it's some really interesting listening to kind of think about this music concrete kind of assemblage that they did. It's really completely unlike anything else in Crimson's catalog. If anything, it owes a lot more towards early Zappa and Mothers of Invention in terms
Really?
of kind of in terms of like the cut and paste-ness of everything,
Okay.
but yet getting music out of it. Certainly there's an intensity to it that you wouldn't find in the Zappa universe. But yeah, Thrack Attack is quite it's a challenging listen, but it's fully immersive.
Okay.
Um, I think the sticker that came with the album is that, warning, this album contains 60 minutes of improvisation and a poster.
Okay. Okay. I got you. Well, here's another quick question as a sidebar. Live albums as a whole, as a genre. Do
Yeah.
you think that live albums should be released as they are intended to be released? In other words, do you believe that a live album can give you the intensity, the impact, and all of the uh, power on a single disc, or should a live album be a double disc?
Uh, well, okay. Let's define our terms. Um, Allman Brothers Live at the Fillmore East, double album when it was released, easily can fit onto a single compact disc.
Okay.
So do you mean, so again, are you thinking like vinyl days? Are you talking CD days or?
I'm saying can, I'm saying either. I'm saying can you get the veracity, the intensity, the passion from a performance from a single live album, or do you believe
Oh,
that a live album should have a beginning, a middle, and an ending?
I see what you're saying. Well,
We'll get back to the show in a minute, ladies and gentlemen.
we
Uh,
will as we think about
yeah,
it. So a well-constructed show
yes.
will have a beginning, middle, and an end. So if you take an album and just have it to be like a complete representation of a concert, that can work if the concert is well constructed, if the set list is
Mhm.
well constructed, which you know a lot of the Crimson albums that have come out over the last few years
Mhm.
are basically that. The Music is Our Friend is basically an entire show plus a few extra tunes. The
Okay.
Live in Chicago is one entire show. The
Mhm.
I think it's Live in Toronto, again, one entire show.
Mhm.
But they also go in and they chop and paste to assemble things. Radical Action, Meltdown,
Yeah.
and that's just Crim. What I thought you were getting at was,
Sorry.
can a live album properly express the intensity that a live performance does? That's where I thought you were going.
No, what I'm sorry, maybe I didn't explain properly. I've always been under the belief that to get the like if a show is 2 hours, then and you want to release a proper representation of a live show of a concert, then in my honest opinion, you should release the entire concert on a, if it's a double disc, fine. Let's go to vinyl. If it's a
Yep.
double vinyl album, fine. Um, Release a double album, release a double vinyl album.
Hmm.
I do not believe you could get the the intensity of a show that is condensed to one vinyl record.
Okay, so using the Crim catalog,
Yes,
USA,
yes.
which came out, in 1975 or four, that was taking tracks from King Crimson's live shows and
Okay,
putting it out as basically a 40-minute album.
okay.
I think your stance, your supposition is that that fails to really capture the fullness of what the band could do because it's truncated.
That's right. Can
Okay.
okay, yeah, that's my th- that is my gripe is that you get
Okay.
these albums and you say, oh, it's the full performance, but then like say a few months or a few years later, you hear, oh, these are the information comes out. These are the songs that never made it to the official release of this album, and it's like
Yes.
I'm missing the full show. If I'm going to, pardon me, guys, if I'm going to purchase a live recording of this performance, give me the entire performance. I don't care if it's a single disc or if it's a double disc, or in the case of Paul McCartney and Wings Across America, a triple disc. Give
Yep.
me what is there. Give me what was recorded on the tour for the show. I want to hear it all. I
I
want
hear
it
you.
all and I want it now. You know what I mean?
And
That,
I resonate with a lot of that and I agree with a lot of that.
okay.
However,
There's
however,
however, go on.
there's always a however. So again, let's take the Crimson catalog for an example. So the album USA has this amazing improv in it called Asbury Park,
Okay.
recorded in Asbury Park. And again, it's this thing where, Bruford starts it off with just this drum roll, and then Wetton comes in underneath with this monster, and then you hear Fripp yell F, and then they just start jamming in F over the whole thing.
Yeah,
Now
because
this
he's guiding where it's going. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, so this thing on the USA album lasts for like a solid, you know, gobsmacking like 7 minutes. However, what was released on USA is not the entire improvisation. So when
See,
it
that
was
pisses
released
me off.
on, well, hang on, let me get to my point, good sir, if you'll allow me, if you'll allow
Sorry.
me. So
Sorry.
on the DGM Live website, where you can download the entire shows,
Okay.
you get the entirety of the Asbury Park improv.
Yeah.
But the last 2.5 minutes that Fripp decided to cut, I get why he cut that. It's like the improv just ran out of steam. There was just something about the interplay where it just kind of all of a sudden fell, and it did not have that same ferocity and intensity. But there's like two sides of me. I understand exactly where you're coming from. I want the warts and all performance, especially on a band like Crim, which is definitely walking that tightrope.
Okay. And we guys, we are going to get back to the top 10 in a second. I get what you're saying about editing out the 2 minutes where the improv ran out of steam. I understand that. What I'm
Yeah.
saying is you get an album like USA that has got 40 minutes. There's
Yep.
no way in hell that a concert in 1973 lasted 40 minutes.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
If there are additional songs that were in the set that
Hmm.
warranted a double disc release, that you would get the entire recording, you get the entire show. I, as a fan of Queen, of Crimson, of Zappa, would want the entire performance laid out for me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That is where I'm coming from. So, and I get where you're, and I didn't mean to cut you off before. I'm sorry about that.
No. No.
I'm just saying that there is no way in hell that you could get the entire passion of the entire be caught up in a show that is 2 hours long and it's edited down to say 40 minutes or 50 minutes. There's no way that you could get
Right.
the full impact of a concert on a single disc.
I agree.
That's my humble opinion. So um
I agree. And that's, the beauty of being in this internet age where you have bands like Fish, Pearl Jam, King Crimson, where you can buy full shows. And so you're just no longer constrained by physical media
yeah,
and the marketplace that has to go in with that. Now you can really get into the whole thing. So it's a boon for um, fans of these bands to be able to go in and go deep like that.
I get it. I get you. Back to the show, ladies and
Good
gentlemen.
sidebar. I like that.
We're gonna do a show of just sidebars, guys. Um Seriously.
Bring
Back
it.
to
Let's do it.
Oh no, I'm serious. We're gonna talk about that off camera. Um
Okay.
Back to the show, ladies and gentlemen. We are coming to our number three. So your
We are.
number
My
three.
number three
Mm-hmm.
is Three of a Perfect Pair.
Okay.
We that was on your list. That was your number six. I've been taking notes.
Yeah.
Um, Great record. I wish I had had the presence of mind to had seen them at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was aware of it that they were playing in Berkeley in the Greek Theater in my neck of the woods,
Yeah.
but for some reason I don't know what it was, college, working, summer, whatever. Didn't have money. Could be any of those or all of those. But yeah, I didn't get a chance to see Crimson live until the Thrack tour. Um, all that being said, Three of a Perfect Pair to me is a perfect coalescence of the pop side of Crimson, which blue represents,
Yeah.
and the completely nutso avant-garde side of it, which Fripp represents,
Yeah.
with Ballou and Bruford kind of being the glue that holds the whole thing
Mm-hmm.
together. Yeah, so for every Three of a Perfect Pair is one of my favorite songs of all time. It's
Mm-hmm.
just so well done, and just that little surprise of the buried um, acoustic guitar in the outro, which you didn't hear from the '80s Crim until that recording. That's just such a nice little touch that brings a warmth to what is otherwise just kind of this wild cacophony of weird shifting time signatures and bizarre guitar sounds. And it's not about mental illness, but it's about someone who kind of sees a relationship differently than someone else does.
Yeah.
um, so
Yeah.
it's nice to
I've
kind of
been
have that
there.
ground. Hey, preach it, man. um,
No, we all.
Side side two, which is the real funky side, has the great combination of industry and dig me. Um, you know, Industry is again, it's like, a measure of five and a measure of seven. So it's in 12, but it's counted in five and seven or seven and five, one something like that. And
Okay.
it's just great. And Dig Me is such a wildly unexpected song. It's a love letter to uh, Americans' love of cars and where they go to die. Um,
Oh God. Okay. Hmm.
great track. And then Lark's Tongue's number three has this amazing blistering Fripp intro, which I again, much like Fracture, when I heard, I just kind of went,
Okay.
"What am I hearing?" It's just stunning. So yeah,
Yeah.
Three of a Perfect Pair, my number three.
Good choice. Good choice. My number three, ladies and gentlemen, is Lizard, released December 11th, 1970. Uh, and you wouldn't think that this album would be so high on my list, but you know what? I was going through an experimentation mode when I was listening to this album. Experimentation all over the place. Again, the album clocks in at 42 minutes and 30 seconds, produced by Robert Fripp and Peter Sinfield. Starts off with Circus, and again, including uh, on the track, you have including entry of the Chameleons. Nice piano intro on this track, really dramatic passages, good acoustic guitar. Next up, you have Indoor Games. Nice use of horns and jazz experimentation, good acoustic guitar, experimentation all over the place. I mean, experimentation should be the name of the band, actually, instead of King
Yes.
Crimson. But fantastic album. And again, I'm getting into these albums late, right? Like over the past couple of years. Next up is Happy Family. Uh, Again, more experimentation with soundscapes, jarring notes, nice use of flute, very abstract. Lady of the Dancing Water, beautiful flute, acoustic guitar on this track. And then,
And
and
then
then you get
brace yourselves.
side two, you get to track five, the massive, massive title track, clocking in at 23 minutes and 25 seconds. Hello, game over. We're done. I mean, call in the troops. We're done.
Call in the Mellotron,
Oh
as I
my
recall.
God, all over the place. Dripping, dripping, seething with Mellotron. Thank you for the graphic there. I mean, just, it starts off with Prince Rupert Awakes. Uh, Again, dramatic Mellotron intro, good piano, nice vocal from John Anderson from Yes.
Yes. Thank you for pointing that out.
Here we go. Ethereal Mellotron on this track. Again,
Hmm.
then you segues into Bolero, right?
Or the Peacocks, I think, as they call it on there, right?
The Peacock, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Great clarinet, trumpet combination, atmospheric passages, nice piano experimentation on this track, just amazing. Um, the Battle of the Glass Tears, uh, eerie clarinet intro on this track, different time signature changes on this, just all over the place. Use of timpani, fantastic. I love good timpani. I could smoke a cigarette to having a good timpani section. I'm telling you,
Hey, hey, hey.
gets me going here.
TMI.
Well, it is a family show.
Thank
Um,
you.
just great ominous passages on this track. Um, and the whole album itself, it's it's an exploration and an experimentation, right?
Yep.
Again, nothing is off the table. Expect the unexpected, right? And
Right.
that's what you get with this album. It's an amazing piece of work.
So when you said King Crimson is a band of something, experimentation, was that the word that you used? They should have called themselves experimentation.
Experimentation. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and that definitely this album um kind of codifies that, as well as saying another term that you brought up earlier, which is extremes.
Yes.
Again, a lot of the King Crimson catalog is just about the extremes that can happen within one song or another,
Well,
from just
yeah.
the
Yeah. No, it's
yeah.
true. And I mean, this track, I mean, Lizard ends with a piece called Big Top, you know, clocks in a minute, 18 seconds. But I mean, in my notes, I have, a swelling mellotron on this again with the mellotron and, has a circus kind of a feeling,
Yeah.
like to it, under the big top kind of thing.
Hmm.
So, I
Which
mean,
takes you back to the beginning of the album,
there you go,
which Circus starts there.
circus. So you have a loosely threaded theme throughout the entire album, right?
Yeah.
That brings it all together. So, and yeah, that's why it's number three. I like the fact that it goes from one extreme to another
Hmm.
musically. You basically strap yourself in. You don't know where you're going to end up, and God forbid, you let go of the wheel or take off your seatbelt because you're going to fall out of the car, or you're going to go flying through the window, or you're just going to fall off the roller coaster. You know what I mean?
Right. So Lizard was my number 12. Again, bubbled under.
Okay.
Um, I didn't really come to appreciate the Lizard track until the most recent King Crimson band started performing pieces of Lizard
Okay.
live, and especially the Battle of Glass Tears, with the three drummers and the two or three keyboards that they have going on,
Yeah.
on stage as well. Just it takes the piece that's already powerful on the vinyl from 1970 and makes it look like daycare,
Hmm.
because just the thunder that comes from all those drums and all those keyboards. And again, it's very the timekeeping on it is just very off. It really keeps you off balance. It's a very good
Yeah.
audio representation of battlefield chaos.
It's
Um,
back to the phrase expect the unexpected.
yeah, exactly. That is what the Crim do, as
Yeah.
it turns out, is
Yeah.
the
And
unexpected.
it's true.
Uh, and then just a note on the Bolero. That's actually kind of a cover of the classical tune Bolero, and I'm sorry that the composer escapes me.
Ravel's Bolero?
Ravel, okay? Yes. But it's arranged for, guitar, cornet, cor anglaise, saxophone,
Yeah.
and it's all this intertwining, it's kind of like um New Orleans jazz layered onto a classical composition.
Hmm.
Just the way you've got these different instruments sort of carrying different melodies simultaneously, but it all works together.
Yeah.
Very much like in the old, 1920s tradition of New Orleans jazz with King Oliver, Louis Armstrong, folks like that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, great tune. Great tune, good album. What's interesting is that I love the fact that three of the albums that made your cut, did not make mine. I'm glad we've got some differentiation in our lists here.
Yeah, I know. I know. That's good. That's good
It's
though.
good stuff.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely. I see it. I see it as a positive. This
No,
is a
it is.
win.
It's true. It'd be kind of boring. Okay, my number 10 is this. Oh, well, that's my number 10.
Oh,
Well,
how
my
fun!
number
Yeah,
nine is
yeah,
this. Well, that's my number nine. It's like, holy shit, man. Like change it up a little bit, make it a little interesting here. So, no, I
yeah.
like the fact that between the two of us, we've covered
Pretty
you
much
a
everything.
good breadth of the catalog. Like, pretty much all of the albums. We've touched on everything. So, but
Except for my money is that our number ones are going to be the same. That's my hunch.
we'll
I
see.
don't know,
We'll
but
see. We'll see. Number
okay.
two. You're number
Number
two.
two, In the Court of the Crimson King, which we talked about
Ah,
a lot. Um, Two comments that I'll make on that.
go for it.
Um, I talked a lot about um, this record with my son. We kind of had a little podcast that was published on SoundCloud for a while, and we were comparing different albums of different genres. And I think the episode was like, about give me, share with me an album that I've never heard that kind of defines a genre.
Yeah.
And so I shared with him In the Court of the Crimson King. He shared with me
Was in a hip hop album or something?
no, it was like My Chemical Romance. The
Oh,
Black
okay, okay.
Parade. The Black Parade, I think,
Okay.
was what it was.
Yeah.
So anyway, what stands out for me is that, he listened to Court of the Crimson King. Um, I Talked to the Wind. He said that track is Snoozeville. And I just kind of went, "Nah, all right, you're young and you don't know any better."
Okay.
But that kind of sticks in my mind as something about Court. Um, the other thing about Court, just to kind of talk about the intensity of it and the uniqueness. Um, Again, the '69 band was, they were playing all around London. Their big gig was opening in Hyde Park for the Rolling Stones. That's where their exposure just went blam. And I think before that, they were playing the Speakeasy and the Marquee and all these other,
Yeah.
London places in the know. Hendrix came to one of their shows, and apparently he was just floored. He just could not believe what these guys were putting out on the stage, just the four of them, you know, piano, bass, sax, drums, and a couple of mellotrons here and there.
Yeah.
So Hendrix thought these guys were. So that gives you a
Mhm.
level of kind of understanding of the power that these guys
Yeah.
um, communicated. I didn't really get into the album "The Court of the Crimson King" until I heard um, go back to the box set, the frame by frame box set, where the live disc has a version of Schizoid Man that's performed by the '73 band. So Fripp, Bruton, Wefford, David
Mm.
Cross, and um, Bruford and Wetton and Fripp are just absolute monsters on this track. It's the same track as from the Night Watch live album, and it's just they take it into these funky, jazzy um, areas in the solo. Fripp solos twice on this song, so
Mhm.
right out of the first verses, and then he's got an extended solo before it gets into the ending parts of the song, and it's my favorite Fripp performance there is.
Mhm.
He does these great, just chordal thrashes on the guitar, very much like what he did on Heroes, but a lot angrier.
Oh, okay.
And instead of just the sustain of holding the note, he's just kind of going for it. So I guess it's a lot like Sailor's Tale
Yeah.
from Islands, but
Mhm.
it's just an intensity of that version that made me say, okay, I need to go back and check out the original version again, and it gave me a greater appreciation for that. So
Yeah.
I'm ending up talking about In the Court, which is my number two, and the Night Watch album um, at the same time.
No, it's fine. That's the mark of a good album, that of a good artist, that you hear something, you hear a piece of music, and then it'll make you go back and rediscover it from like from the source or from the studio recording, especially if you heard it from a live recording at first, and then you want to go back and listen to the studio albums, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's fantastic.
Yep,
You know,
yep,
that's what happened with me with Queen, with the Live Killers album. So
okay,
I listened to the Live Killers album, and I went back and I wanted to hear all the other albums, that were featured, that were represented on the Live Killers album. So, no, it's a
hmm
good choice. It's a good choice. My number two, ladies and gentlemen, is Islands. And I didn't think that this album was gonna rank higher than as high as it did, sorry. Released December 3rd, 1971, produced by King Crimson, clocking in at 43 minutes and 49 seconds of just beautiful music. I mean, um, and this album is pretty much considered to be an outlier from the rest of the catalog
hmm
in terms of it didn't sell as well, and in terms of the lineup, they didn't last very long. Uh,
right,
but bloody hell, I mean, it's it's beautiful. Six tracks in all. It starts off with the uh what Formentera Lady, beautiful. 10 minutes and 18 seconds. Just
hmm
amazing. Beautiful cello in the intro, beautiful flute passages, mid-tempo rhythm. Uh and what I also have in my notes is a very clean production of this album.
yeah,
Not muddled in any, shape, form, or fashion. Sailor's Tale is next. The beautiful instrumental, intricate drum pattern on this, uh, strong bass presence on this track, sharp guitar chords. There's a lot of rhythm and counter rhythms on this track. The letters, sorry, is another. gentle guitar passages, heavy sax that comes in at around a minute 17 seconds on the track. Pure jazz improv on,
Yeah.
on this piece. The track in total is 4 minutes and 28 seconds. Ladies of the Road, which is the one outlier of the album.
Yes.
It's a fun track written about groupies. What I mean? Very misogynistic track, like in terms of the lyrics. But great, just a fun track, right? If you can take that with the rest of the album, you're good to go. After that is track 5, Prelude, Song of the Gulls, the instrumental, beautiful flute, very, with a symphonic arrangement to it. And the title track, clocking in at a massive 11 minutes, 51 seconds, Islands. Um,
Beautiful.
just amazing. Nice piano, very melodic. Nice combination of bass flute, very haunting, beautiful melody on this track. Um, Haunting Mellotron again with the Mellotron. You guys, like my God, it's just beautiful.
It
Um,
is. Yeah.
the track ends at 9 minutes 11 seconds, and it carries on with a minute plus of just what sounds to me like they're tuning up their instruments in the studio, getting ready
Hmm.
for a take, right? And that's the track. And
Yeah.
that's the album. It's beautiful. There is a box set. I might even look into getting the box set for this. It's that it was that um, it had that much of an effect on me, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. The song Islands is just a beautiful, beautiful track about, people feeling isolated and lonely and wanting to connect with other people, but yet they are their own island as well. And it's
exactly.
very,
Yeah, and
it's
never the two shall meet.
yeah, it's a very beautiful track. Again, something that I don't know if Krim did live back in 72, 71, but they certainly did it in 2016, 17, 18, and
Exactly.
is just phenomenal.
But
Absolutely phenomenal.
yeah, and ladies and gentlemen, when we said back when we started the show 10 years ago, when how bands, how this band, you went to the bathroom and then you came back to your seat and there was another band member in the band because the other one just left. That's how this is the album we're talking about. That
Yeah,
this album does Islands does not get enough credit, does not get enough mention because it was a very uh it was an intermittent lineup, right? So,
right.
but ladies and gentlemen, we have
One
arrived.
wait,
Oh,
we have arrived, but I have one more comment to
go ahead.
interject.
Go ahead.
You were
Interject.
talking about the letters before, and that was very, very jazzy.
Yes.
Um, in um, the most recent Crim, where Mel Collins is back in the band on sax, they would do versions of the letters that stretched on for, I think, upwards of about 9 minutes because they really took that solo sax part and just really went with it. And it became just this place of just extension and exploration, uh, somewhere between the Grateful Dead meets John Coltrane. I
Okay.
mean, it was just there's a lot about Crimson that is very, very constructed. Otherwise, the pieces of music would entirely fall apart.
Exactly.
So there's not in some Crimson, there's not a lot of improvisation,
Mm,
but in the letters, definitely they took that as a jumping off point and say we're just going to go where the music takes us. And that was always in hearing all the various recordings that have come out from the last Crim configuration. Hearing the letters was always a highlight for me because the longer they went on, when they started back in 2014, there was a little exploration in the letters, but it was pretty close to like the normal studio tracking time. But the
mhm.
longer they stayed on the road and the more confident they became more and more fearless. And you would really get into this Coltrane, Grateful Dead kind of territory where you would hear Fripp and Jocko and the drummers and the keyboard players really intertwining with Mel Collins just to make something just really grand and swelling out of the improv parts. So,
Mhm.
um, my little hot tip for you guys to hear the letters. I think it's on Live in Chicago, I think, um, which is a 2016 recording. Well worth
Okay.
checking out.
Okay. Cool. That's good to know. It's good to
So
know.
I stepped on your grand introduction.
No, no,
Please
that's fine.
please forgive me.
No, it's fine. I forgive you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived at our number one. So, Jim, what is your number one King Crimson album? Moment of truth.
Discipline. 1981. It is a perfect album. It is an album that everyone should have in their record collection or at least have heard once. It's one of those 1001 albums that you have to hear before you die. It's staggering just how well this album holds up. You know, how far are we off away from that now? 40
Yeah.
years, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
40 years on, it still sounds fresh and like nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's this is this thing where Fripp had this very particular vision of what he wanted the band to be and what he wanted it to sound like. And that was kind of the template for, Discipline, Beat, and Three of a Perfect Pair. And
Yeah.
in the Discipline album, it has its purest, most perfect um, assemblage. It's just perfect.
I would agree.
That's my number one.
I would agree. My number one, ladies and gentlemen, moment of truth. Drum roll, please. Discipline.
How boring!
There we go.
You make me sit through a nearly 2 hour conversation with you, Armando, and you're telling me we end up with the same number one?
I was surprised too. I
Oh,
was surprised too. Um, Discipline, released September 22nd, 1981. Produced by King Crimson and Rhett Davies. Guys, and again, this was the album that was my introduction to King Crimson at 11 years old. Uh, Clocking in at 38 minutes and 15 seconds. And if you don't think that you can have an album of rock, experimentation, dance rock, you're wrong because this album has it all. 7 tracks in total. Uh, this saw the band go into a what was called a dance rock new wave area of music. Starts off with Elephant Talk. Uh, just amazing. In my notes, and we're going to go through my notes here. Sparse drums, funky guitar treatments on this track. Um, and you just have Adrian Belew go off on a tangent of just spouting off lyrics and just sort of like in sort of a mid shout kind of a format. Fantastic. Frame by Frame comes next, one of my favorite tracks. Repetitive bass line, fantastic guitar chords, rhythmic percussion on this track. Again, this tracks are relatively short, 4 minutes, 43 seconds for Elephant Talk, 5 minutes and 9 seconds for Frame by Frame. Mate Kudasa, which is Japanese for Please Wait. Fantastic, beautiful, relaxed tempo, great guitar on this track. Just ethereal, almost
yeah.
in terms of the arrangement. Indiscipline is next, track number 4. Um, Again, heavy bass presence, very percussive, thick guitar tone, spoken word, just on this track. Wall of sound, wall of textures on this piece of music. Just amazing. Um, Track number 5, and I'm gonna get this screwed up, but forgive me. Uh, Thela Hunjinji.
Dude, you nailed it.
All right, thank you, thank you. You know, fantastic track. Again, very rhythmic. Great guitar. I call this an ass shaker of a track.
Yeah,
Very much an ass shaker. Doesn't matter if you have a big ass, small ass, fat ass, it don't matter. Your ass is up and moving. You're bopping your
yeah.
head, you're tapping your foot, you're snapping your fingers. Your ass is moving to this track, okay? You want a good
Hmm.
workout song? Put this track on your work for your workout. You're off and running. I'm telling you right now. Amazing.
Absolutely. It's
Amazing.
amazing. And you can't help but move because you've got, both guitars and
Yeah,
the bass and the drums. It's all rhythm. It's
just
just
oh
propulsive.
God, And up next, after Othello and Gingy. You have the Sheltering Sky, instrumental track, rhythmic percussion, melodies and counter melodies galore on this track. Swashes of synths, I call them. Very atmospheric track. And the title track, the instrumental Discipline, is track number 7. Um, what can I say here? Percussive rhythm,
Hmm.
um, what I call a very structured guitar melody on this track. But you know what, guys? If you want an album, if you one of the few out there who have not heard King Crimson, and you want an album that is new wave, progressive, but also at the same time very accessible, this is the album for you. Okay,
Yeah.
not Beat, not Three of a Perfect Pair. Discipline is the perfect album for you.
Yep.
I kid you not. And again, if you get the Discipline box set, which I almost did, but I was not going to pay $300 for it.
Yeah.
Couldn't do
On
it.
and Off the Road is the name of that box set that's
Yeah,
got the
on and off the road. So
Discipline Beat and Three of a Perfect Pair. Yeah.
exactly. Included in On and Off the Road are the two other albums, Beat and Three of a Perfect Pair. Okay, if you want to get all three of them wrapped up in one, plus a shitload of live recordings and additional material, this box set is for you. If you can get it for a
Yeah.
decent price, Amazon was selling it last year for $295. I got a mortgage to pay for it. I can't do that. I
Yeah.
can't do it. I can't do it. But that is my number one, as
You
well as
know,
Jim's number
you're
one.
you're talking about it brings a few more thoughts to mind, if I may.
Go ahead.
Um, so um, yeah, if you're not familiar with this era of Grimm, but you are familiar with, say, Talking Heads Remain in Light or Speaking in Tongues,
Yeah.
that will give you kind of a similar
Reference point.
neighborhood in which this album kind of lives. So it's very rhythmic. It is new wavy, but it's not new wave. But it certainly, ties to that. Um, One of the fascinating things about this album is there is very little cymbal work on it. The stuff that Bruford is doing with timekeeping, a lot of it is just on smaller drum heads, just to kind of keep the rhythm moving forward.
Yeah.
Um, and
Just to
it's
keep it propelling, to keep it pushing forward. Yeah, to keep it going.
right,
Yeah.
right, and it's fantastic. So in a way, that's reminiscent of Peter Gabriel 3, which also has very little cymbal work on it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you were making a comment about Tony Levin's bass and about how on some songs it's repetitive, but it's not repetitive boring. It's
No,
it's
no,
it,
not
it's
at all.
it's repetitive, kind of like a modernistic Motown,
Yeah.
because Levin's bottom end on that bass, whether he's playing the stick or whether he's playing a standard bass guitar, just propels these tunes forward, especially Thela Hujinji. Again, kind of like what Levin was doing with Peter Gabriel's band. It's
Yes.
very simple bass lines. Thela is just doom 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 doom
Yeah.
doom doom, but it's it's just perfect because it fits in with everything else, just propelling the whole
Yeah.
thing off.
Yeah. And you'll have albums where, you think, you say, okay, it's your favorite album. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be doing an episode with Bill Schuster in July, 31 perfect albums. Okay. There are albums that you like, right? Or that you think are perfect. And once in a while, there's a track on these albums where you think, okay, well, I'm not into that right now. I'll skip that. There's no track to skip on this album.
It's a no skip album.
There's a
Exactly.
no skip album. I mean, it is a no skip album. I mean, as much as I love A Night at the Opera from Queen, and everyone knows that I'm a Queen fanatic. I mean, there are times when I don't want to listen to Good Company, and I'll skip Good Company, even though
Mhm.
I love the tracks preceding it, and I love Rhapsody, Bohemian Rhapsody. There are times I don't want to hear Good Company, but with discipline, every track is a banger. Every track
That's exactly what I was going to say.
keeps you
Yeah.
going. It keeps
Yes.
you, it pushes you forward. And yes, there are, you know, Thalahunjinji is an ass shaker of a track. You want to get sweating, you want to go for a good workout, put this track on loop. If you can get like a 10-minute extended mix of this, go for it. It'll get you moving. You'll burn the calories off no in no time flat. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
every track on this album is a banger. Every track on Discipline works. And there are no wrong notes. There's nothing wrong with this album. It is
No.
picture perfect from the track sequencing to everything. Nothing is amiss. Okay. So you really need to check out this album if you haven't yet. If you're one of the few that haven't yet, check out this album. I was gonna say download it. Well, you can, but you can stream it on YouTube. You can, but again, don't take my word for it. Listen to it first and then go buy it. You can
And
stream
if
it
you can
first.
get your hands on it when you buy it, buy the copy of the Steven Wilson remix, which came out, which is the part of the 40th anniversary series that Crimson had.
I have
Um,
it.
Steven Wilson's work with Yes, Tull, Crim, um, he doesn't change the sound. He accentuates it. He gives it space. It you're able to hear, especially for me, for Discipline, it gave more distinction to the instruments,
Yeah.
but yet the cohesion still held, like Elmer's glue. It's Steven Wilson's remix work on the Crimson catalog is exemplary because it's not, it's not like what ZZ Top did in the 80s and put electronic drums on everything. It's not a bastardization of the stuff that came before. It's
The,
it's it's like restoring the Sistine Chapel.
what you're
That's
saying
that's the
about
closest thing I can think
Discipline.
of it.
Yeah. What you're
Yeah.
saying about Discipline in the Stephen Wilson remix is that the message is still there, just stronger.
Yes. Absolutely.
There you go, guys. Our top 10 King Crimson albums. Thank you for this extended edition of the Music Den. Uh, we have grown older since we started this 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and wiser as well. I want to thank Jim Bricker for joining me on this episode and for being very patient with me with my descriptions of the albums. And again, ladies and gentlemen, maybe there's an album in this list that you haven't heard yet and you want to go check out. You can, and if you hear my dogs barking, I apologize. Bob's home. Anyways, um, if there's an album that you haven't heard yet, you can stream all these albums on YouTube. Honestly, they're that good. Okay. And again, I
And then
want
go buy them.
and go buy it. Obviously, go buy it. And if you can invest in the box sets, please invest in the box sets. They are worth it, especially Discipline on and off the road. I'm telling you, go check it out. You will not be disappointed. And check out the
Agreed.
Stephen Wilson remix of it. So again, I want to thank Mr. Jim Bricker for joining me on this episode.
It was a
Um,
pleasure.
I'm gonna put this out there. We are working on an episode that's coming up in a couple of months' time. You've heard of the term flipping the script. Well, we've blown up the script. We are going to be giving you our top 10 Looney Tunes cartoons. Okay. This is an idea that Jim came up with, and you know what? I've already got my list going. We're waiting for a third individual to join us on this episode. We're going to be doing this sometime in August, but we've got more shows coming up. Jim and I are going to be doing our top 10 Frank Zappa albums.
At some
And
point. Yep.
at some point, Jim's
We're
almost
waiting
ready.
on me.
He's
It's
got
all my
7.
fault.
I've got my list ready to go. He's got 62 albums whittled down to 17.
And I
So,
gotta eliminate 7.
and he's got to eliminate
and rank
7.
them.
So that is coming up. I'm also going to be doing a show at some point, again with Bill Schuster on the Tea Party under New Music Discovery. We're going to be talking about Splendor Solace, their a major label debut for EMI Canada and for Chrysalis in the US and in Europe. And that's coming up soon. So again, we thank you for your patience, for being patient with us, going off on tangents. We are going to do an episode on just tangents, just going off on stream of consciousness discussion. Okay.
Oh, are we?
Yes, we are. Big
Okay.
surprise, right? Anyways, again, thank you for your patience and for putting up with us for 2 hours. We'll see you soon with another episode. Please click like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to keep yourselves on top of any new content that I've got coming up. And that's it for now. Please look after yourselves and one another. I am Armando Venditti from Mr. Jim Bricker signing off. Have a good night. Bye-bye.